Tuesday is almost over, but organizations want to stress the importance of making every day a day to give to charities.
WIFR reporter Alyssa Kelly meets with local organizations to learn about the impact one donation can have on its ability to serve the community.
We really rely on the generosity of community members and organizations.
Since its start in 2012, the Giving Tuesday movement pumped more than $1 billion into online charities around the world.
When you contribute to an organization, you are communicating to the people that they serve that you care about them.
One of those organizations, the Rockford Family Peace Center, supports those who experience domestic or sexual violence. But without donations, leaders say that support wouldn't exist.
The contributions to the Family Peace Center and the collaborative nature in which we do this work have the chance and opportunity to make a huge impact across a number of organizations and a number of survivors.
And your money can trickle from charity to charity. For instance, by donating to the Peace Center, you can impact other organizations like Children's Safe Harbor.
As a result of the need for the services and us being the only agency in the area that provides these services free of charge, we want to and have the need to be able to build a second supervised visitation room so people contributing and donating to us today could help support that effort.
At Noah's Ark, coordinators struggled the last few years right after the pandemic hit. It's the donations that kept them going.
Because we do have staff that we need to pay to have here, and we need to keep the lights on, and lots of different things that are getting very expensive for us. So any donation truly makes the biggest difference for us.
In Rockford, Alyssa Kelly, WIFR News.
For Giving Tuesday, the Better Business Bureau wants to remind donors to give wisely, but also watch out for scams by looking for name similarities, reviewing the website, checking with state charity officials, and being wary of emotional appeals.